Hey everyone. Right, we're going to have a little fireside chat now, as you can probably tell by now. Joining me on stage is Paul van der Lingen. He's Solutions Architects Director at NetApp, and we're going to be talking about tech and AI in sustainability, unleashing the power of innovation.
Am I? Okay.
Apparently, that's what it says here, yeah. Feel free to talk about anything you like. So my first question is probably, what does a solutions architect director do? And it'd be interesting to know how many people know what NetApp does as well.
I would really like to see that. If you know who NetApp are, can you put your hands up?
Who's heard of NetApp?
Yeah, so those are my three colleagues.
Yeah? Right, end of session.
But that's, that's actually the result I was really hoping for, because we did a little check on organizations that are here today. And it's not scientific, because we just did a yep, maybe, yep, no. And we reckon 65% of you are running your data storage on our technology. And yet not one hand other than from my colleagues went up. NetApp is a data management, data storage company. My role in that, I'm in the office of the CTO, and I'm in the leadership group for our sustainability efforts. We're one of the most significant, our industry is one of the most significant consumers of electricity and energy, and one of the ugliest polluters. And my role is to try to change that, both internally within the company and in what our customers are doing.
So how do you do that?
We have a mantra at NetApp. We've heard it in previous sessions today, and I don't know that it's ours. But everything we try to do, particularly around sustainability, and particularly what I try to do, focuses on people, on planet, and then on profit. So hiring is a challenge in any industry. There are so many jobs that remain unfulfilled. There was a survey that was done in the Netherlands. I'm from the Netherlands. That's why I'm 6'4". And they asked people, they did demographic surveys of young people. Would you take a salary cut to work at a company that had what you consider to be the correct ethical standards? 40% of those people said yes, they would. They would take up to 50% salary cut. That's fast. I can tell you I wouldn't take a 50% salary cut. But I think the point about that is these are young people who don't have mortgages and have kids, and that's going to change. I don't think we should get too hung up on the number, but it's just this vastness of a willingness to do things differently. That's people. In terms of profit, so here's the fun thing about profit. We heard yesterday that ROI, and yet we as the citizens, we as the people, we as the electorate, we as the consumers can determine what has value and what shouldn't have value. And so does it always have to come down to dollars? So at the moment it does. We're seeing in our industry, 3 years ago there were no questions about sustainability. Now we see 20 to 30 points on any RFP is around sustainability. It's at that point where it's going from, can you do it? And I think the next stage is, how well do you do it? We're starting to see that evolution taking place, and that's great. It's really good. I'm pleased with that. And then there's the issue of planet. This is politicized planet. Talking about, as a technology company, talking about planet. I have always in the past shied away from my own views. But I'm not doing that anymore. I feel that if I come out as a sustainability person, if I am bold, I'm okay with that. I'm okay with dealing with how the responses to that come. So that's a little summary of what I focus on.
And how is that regarded? Would you say, like you're talking about injecting more of your own personal beliefs and ideas into the role? Does that fit with corporate culture?
Yes and no. We know that corporations of every scale and size have got a top-down approach. We need to focus on growth Every CEO is focused on growth, focused on talent, focused on technology, right? That's the pyramid of what they're focusing on. And things will come along that will impact that, and then organizations need to deal, like sustainability is one of them. No one cared about sustainability significantly even 5 years ago. Maybe we can go back 15 years. But growth and talent and technology or product has been the cornerstone of any business process. Now sustainability comes along and challenges growth for the reasons I just mentioned about profit. It challenges talent for the reasons that I spoke about in terms of hiring and the need to be seen and to do the good things. And it's being challenged, I think, by technology. I have some unterrible facts, right? So I wrote some facts down. But when we talk about technology, I mentioned already that we're one of the ugliest industries in terms of energy. So we have been spending a huge amount of energy from top down in terms of how can we do better. But I really believe the real change comes when you have a leadership that says you have to do more, but we're also focusing on all these other things. And then you enable a layer at the bottom of the organization to work up and say, okay, here's things I see. Here's areas I want to engage with. These are things that I want to do. The three folks that are with me from NetApp today are members of a group that we formed a year ago, which is called the Sustainability Innovation Group. And we put a call out to everybody in the organization saying, we want to do better at sustainability. We want to help drive our scope 1, scope 2, scope 3. We want to be better with our water usage. We just want to be better. We want to be a better company. We have clear goals that we've published. We're working towards those goals. But what else can we do? And so, this team that we had, this group, came up with some brilliant ideas. We got changes made by Zoom, for example, that Zoom used to have this thing where you would leave a room and the screen would simply go black, but it was still on. Actually, one of the guys sitting down there was instrumental in getting Zoom to change that. So after 15 minutes, it powers off, not just going black. That sounds like a really trivial thing. We have 7,000 of those screens that are now, instead of just going black, they're turning off. Is it going to really change our scope 1? Perhaps. Scope 3? Perhaps 0.1%. But there's more and more and more of that. Our UK office is now 85% single-use plastic-free, because another one of the people sitting there with me is passionate about that, and she decided, I want to drive this. So that's bottom up. There was no intention from our workplace experience people to drive that change, because it wasn't felt to be significant. But people are passionate about making a change. Leverage that passion. Empower people to use that passion.
So when it comes down to people, profit, planet, what role do you think technology plays in driving us towards the goals that we're trying to achieve?
So I love technology, right? I absolutely do. I like the fact that if I'm not 100% paying attention when I'm driving, maybe there's a phone call, or maybe I'm tired, or maybe the sun is in my eyes, my car is always paying attention. My car never doesn't pay attention. It's a Polestar, by the way, the Polestar lady, I listened to her yesterday. It's always paying attention. Technology enables that. Millions of hours of driving in terms of machine learning and creating algorithms that are fed into my car to make it. I'm all for that, right? I'm all for medical advances that technology is enabling. I'm all for things that help us progress as a society, but I'm not for it at any cost. And let's just talk about data waste, because that's the most shameful thing, I think, in this room. There was a protest at Schiphol a couple of years ago. A group of young people broke and they cut through the fence, which does ask some questions about Schiphol security. They went in with bicycles and they circled around the private jet section, and they handcuffed themselves to the buggy wheels and the nose wheels of some Gulfstreams and things like this. I find it, I love activism, right? Because it does change the industry. But if only they knew that they were surrounded at Schiphol by the world's largest data centers, which emit more pollution. they generate more greenhouse gases, they take more energy than the entire aviation industry does. And data storage, the industry I'm in, is a significant part of that. So here's my statistics, and I've got my correct glasses on. So in 2020, ICT was generating or using 2% of the world's electricity. By 2030, initial expectations were that would rise to 8 or 9%, but I believe it's going to be closer to 13. Data storage is going to be 40% of that. And here's the tragedy.
Sorry, was that 14 or 40?
40% of that. And here's the tragedy. You know that 68% of the data we create, and I'm not looking at your cat videos here, I'm looking at corporate data. Cat videos, sure, delete your cat videos, please. But I'm talking about corporate data. 68% of it is created, never looked at, never used, never referenced, never searched, never indexed, never used in an AI training model. It's orphaned data. But it might have value. And nobody is prepared to just ignore it. So it needs to be cooled, it needs to be managed, it needs to be protected, it needs to be secured. It's just this gulf of waste. If you're a building, if you're a company, you have 100 people, and then you grow and you're 200 people. You don't move out of that building and keep the lights on and keep stocking the fridges. You clean up after yourself. But we don't do this with data. And that is leading to some astronomical things. I reckon there's, what do you reckon, there's 200, 250 people in here?
I would say so, yeah. For the benefit of our virtual audience, there's around 250 people in the room.
I want to give you a metric which I do know and I don't need my piece of paper for. There's a measurement of data called a yottabyte. And a yottabyte is a very, very big number. It's an inconceivably, indescribably large number. So I'll give it to you in two ways to look about it. A grain of sand, compared to the entire Milky Way, is 1 yottabyte size difference, right? So just let that sink in. Another metric for you to take is that if everybody in here came and put their iPhones on this table for me, say 250 iPhones, and we then gave 250 iPhones to every single human on the planet, that's a yottabyte. And corporately, we are generating that much data. At the moment, we're not, but we will within the next 3 or 4 years, every single year. And 68% of it isn't being used, ever again.
Okay, well, that's pretty crazy, obviously. And I suppose what's more crazy than that is, how is all of that powered?
By a lot of hamsters. Power is creating some interesting challenges. So if we look, the Netherlands, where I'm from, is a fairly traditional company. I'm technically Dutch, but I'm not from the Netherlands, so I can be a bit rude about the Dutch. We traditionally do whatever Germany does, right? And they've always provided us with power. And then we've bought, as we can do, we've bought from the Scandinavian countries for greener power. But Germany is going through its own energy crisis, and everybody is now queuing up. A real deep-seated energy crisis is happening around us. So the Dutch government, that's traditionally fairly conservative in terms of, fairly sustainable government, signed off last year on 2 nuclear power reactors and has just submitted a proposal for 2 more nuclear power reactors. To me, this is, if you don't live in the Netherlands, it might not shock you, right? But to the people who live in the Netherlands and our understanding of how fundamentally different this is, we had to decline the Meta's largest data center because our grid couldn't handle it. First world nation, very developed first world nation, we couldn't have the Meta data center because we couldn't power it. Ireland is already 1/3, by the end of next year, 1/3 of Ireland's electricity will go to powering data centers. Some predictions are that by 2040, 75% of it. And this is before these superpods are coming online. So, I mean, I don't want it to be doom and gloom, right? Because there are things that we can do. There really are things that we can do. Imagine if we cleaned up that 68% of data, or if we didn't even clean it up, we just said we're not prepared to delete it because maybe it has value. Instead of keeping it in our top drawer of interesting stuff, we put it somewhere where if we ever need it, it doesn't matter if it takes us a week to get it. That's a deliberate action. That's a deliberate thing that we can do that says, I'm going to be mindful about what I keep. I appreciate business might need to keep it, but I don't need to keep it on the fastest, hottest tier. I don't need to keep that really old stuff where maybe I can access it. This is an action that is a very simple action, but it will result in, actually not good news for my company, it will result in you slowing down purchases because you will have free space. You'll have free compute resort that was doing nothing useful. So yeah, that's a good thing that we can do.
So what's the key message here?
The key message is clean up after yourself. How I'm doing that, right? I spend as much time as I can speaking to people who are much smarter about this than myself, and I consolidate that information. How do we work with people in terms of their own cleanup? How do we help them to do categorization? I join communities. Sometimes the communities are hair shirt hippies, and I go and I learn what living off the land means. Is that for me? I'm not sure it's for me, but I want to see that perspective. I want to understand how that could be a future for people. I'm comfortable challenging executives in terms of corporate greed. That's a terrible thing to say, but in terms of the endless need for growth. Can we not do that responsibly? Yes, let's grow. I'm cool, but how can we do that responsibly? And just clean up after yourself. Ask your IT department. Hey, how much data are we using that we don't need? Do you really need to keep it? And surround yourself with people who are going to constantly challenge you. That's my call to action.
And what about the people? Because this comes down to people changing their ways, right?
Right. I think the days of us yelling at people and telling them that they're bad are over. I would rather we inspire people with what can be achieved. I've been deeply inspired by some of the panels that we've heard in terms of how we can reframe the discussion, how we can reframe that sustainability isn't an insurance policy that you have to fund but you resent. It's actually the better way of doing things. And if we can shift our mindsets and shift the mindsets of our leaders that says that actually the outcome of sustainability is the return we want, as opposed to we're doing it because we want to continue selling to organizations that care about it. No, we want to do it. We want to set that stage that says, actually, I would like to buy from companies that meet my values. Wouldn't it be nice if instead of it was just the 25-year-olds who said, I don't want to work for an ugly company, if it was all of us? That's too far, I know, but wouldn't that be nice?
Do we have any questions from the audience, by the way? If we do, if you can just put your hand up and we'll bring a microphone out to you. Can't see any at the moment, so I will move on. Oh, there is one there. Yes, well, don't be shy. I saw a hand going up there. If we can get a microphone out. In the meantime, no need to run, Amber. I'm going to ask a question. Health and safety. Now, you mentioned the AI in passing as well, and obviously in terms of the sheer volume of data that AI and Gen AI is going to be consuming and the impact that's going to have on data centers as well. How do you see Gen AI mitigating that by helping to find some solutions?
I think it's going to do that in the long run. I don't think it's going to do that in the short term. I think in the short term, it's the wild, wild west. It's the gold rush. Every single customer that I speak to of a significant scale has something going on with how they're starting to use Gen AI. It's not necessarily doing anything for them yet, but it's there. They're all experimenting with it. They're all feeding it with multi-billion parameter data sets. Those are never data sets that is data in place. It's always data that's copied in and brought into a new world. So those numbers, the yottabyte that I spoke of, that was originally predicted to be 2030. I think that's probably going to come in by 2028 because of Gen AI. However, if we are resilient, and if I was at a session the other day when the Chief Sustainability Officer for Orange Group gave some of his numbers. They're not mine to give, so I'm not going to tell you those numbers. But he said, here's our percentage of metric tons of CO2, and here's the world's. We can, as one of the biggest companies in the world, we can turn everything off, and it really makes no difference. But we have 50,000 employees. If we can inspire those 50,000 employees to reach out to 10 contacts each, that's 5 million people. The number gets bigger and bigger. And if we then start reaching to a point where Gen AI is focused, there are people who are saying, I'm clever, I want to live on this planet, I want my children to have a future. Tell us how to do this. Not Gen AI itself, but machine learning will get there. Then I think we have a chance. And I'm hoping that there are some of those people in this audience.
Me too. Let's find out. We've got our first question, haven't we? If you can just state your name and where you're from, please, before.
Sure. I'm Anna Katia from P&G. We're a big company. Every year we get an email to say, go clean up your data. There's a percentage, it takes time. There's a percentage of people will go through their folders. Some people are smart enough, they've written code to delete the old stuff. There's quite a large percentage in the real world just sign and say, yeah, I've done it, and probably don't. You said there's lots of data people generate once and never use again. Are there kind of categories of stuff that's big files that people could be directed to kind of go and look at this area, it's taking up loads of space, get rid of it?
So the survey was done by Bloomberg. You can go and look it up. If you search data waste, Bloomberg, it was done in 2022, I believe. And it looked at ICT from a business production perspective, which will include large blobs of data from emails, chains. It will include, cat videos that are being sent around. But I think that that's a relatively small percentage of the data that is. Let me give you an example of how data grows, right? If you have a data scientist who has a 1 terabyte, let's call it a unit of data, right? And you're using this to do AI, you're training AIs with that 1 terabyte, and then you have 250 data scientists, and each of those data scientists wants a copy of the data. In the old world, you would take that 1 terabyte and you would replicate it 250 times so they could each have access to it. And then because you never know whether or not you need it and you wanted to reference it again later, you would just keep it because it was consequence-free. I mean, it made us a lot of money, but it was consequence-free to keep it. There are better ways of doing that, much, much better ways of doing that. And I believe this is where we are seeing the huge explosion of data coming from. And instead of giving everybody 250 copies, how about you have 1 copy and you just give them a virtual copy that they think is the same thing? You've gone from 250 times to maybe 1.10 times. This is technology. This is technology stepping in and saying, we want those data scientists to be productive. We want that large volume of data, but we want to be responsible with how we do it. So there's a technology step happening there.
Did we have one more question?
There's a question here at the front.
Yes. Oh, actually, sorry, can you just wait for the microphone, please? It's just so our virtual audience can hear the question. Thank you.
Thank you. My name is Ash Mukherjee. I'm from Forrester Research. I'm curious, in this particular context, we always have 2 problems. One is that people's perceptions of what makes impact is different from actually what does make impact, right? So you were alluding to the fact that there are various small things that we could be doing, but we could end up sweating the small stuff and dropping the big stuff. So how do you strategize on your initiatives and activities based on actual impact, not perceived impact, or maybe even convenience?
Yeah, I refer to that as internal greenwashing, right? So believing that we, some action that a corporation has told us that we need to do because it's going to use a product of theirs and we think it's going to make a difference. Yeah, let's do it, but let's not think that that's going to make a huge difference. In terms of your direct question, this is why I surround myself with people who challenge me all the time, right? And I'm seeing it on scale. In the Netherlands published a statistic yesterday that 1 in 3, what we refer to as main course meals, so a lunch or a supper, was vegetarian last year. 1 in 3. That's a remarkable number. Now, that doesn't mean that 33% of the Dutch population are referring to themselves as vegetarian, but it just means that there's been an outreach of people who are going, what can I do that makes a material difference? How can I inform myself? How can I educate myself and take meaningful steps? And then from a corporate perspective, measurement is key. Measurement is absolutely key. I cannot stress that enough. If you don't know what you're doing, if you don't know what your polluters are, if you don't know what the positive things that you should be doing more of, again, to get away from just the negative. I'm doing this and it's really good, let's do more of it. I'm doing this and it's really bad, let's do less of it, or change it, or alter it, mitigate it, or somehow. If you can't measure, you can't meaningfully change. And that's been a bit of a theme from panelists, because to me, it's the absolute truth.
Thank you, Paul. We're out of time, which is a shame.
Wow. I thought we were 5 minutes in. I love this subject.
Really enjoyed the subject. Exactly. Time has flown. We could have talked about this for much, much longer. But thank you so much. Really insightful session. Paul, everybody.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.